We raised you.
And they were really smart because like, as we were explaining things to them, you know, about
More peer pressure.
and
Yeah.
work ethics and you know, how it might sound like we're just saying yes to all these things, but we've already seen them and the other. I know that.
If it was something we said yesterday, Anita's over there now.
Morning, everyone. It being 9 o'clock on Wednesday, March 15th. Very special day. Happy birthday to my wife and my son. Yay. If we could call roll, please.
Allen. Kenyon,
Here.
Lewis,
Who's here?
Silva,
Everybody's here.
Carver, Linder,
Linder here.
Pepe,
Jeppy here.
Sturgis.
Surges here.
Have quorum?
We have quorum. Mr. Tepe, could I have, no, not Vern, I don't think, Mr. Kenyon, could we have a motion to approve the minutes of February 15th, 2023?
Consent and approving the minutes from last meeting.
Anyone opposed? Those are passed. I don't see anybody in the audience for public comment. And I don't see, Blair, we don't have anybody online for public comment, correct? Perfect. Monthly financial reports are on file. Which brings us to item 6, Department of Human Resources Management. Jamie Labrillo.
Good morning. First report we have up is the invoice from Blue Cross. It's actually pretty low this month.
Yay.
So it's January's invoice and it's actually kind of normal for January to be low. I think it's just trends and people try to squeeze everything in December, and January is just kind of a low month. So
If this was in a graph, that would be about $280,000 lower than last month. Is that?
yes,
ish.
it's about 1.4, 1.5 million is normal. So at 1.1, it's low. But normally low. So nothing unusual happening. It's within normal range. Next is the MERP graph. We're still holding close to 70. So that's higher than we had trended in past years. So we're showing increase in participation there.
Again, with the MERP increase, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for the county.
The next slide is Assured Partners. If you want to go 2 more slides forward. 1 more. So we've got the first month. And so because it was kind of a low month, that's got us a little ahead there.
It's a positive amount to reserve. And Jamie, and when we talk about reserves again, have we, I don't want to use this term, but I don't know another term. Have we drawn down the reserves to an appropriate level?
We are
To the
still-
level that was recommended?
We are still, so this year's target was to draw them down just a few $100,000 more. So when we calculated rates for this year, we calculated to operate at a couple $100,000 in deficit at the end of the year total.
This is a very positive thing for this month, but runs contrary to our goal.
Well, and that's normal for
We'll make-
January.
we'll make it
There's-
up by-
We're going to
yeah.
make that up as the year goes on.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Okay, the next reports are applicants.
I'm sorry, Jamie, before we leave that, Jamie and I do have a meeting 11 o'clock this morning, 10:30.
Yes, just after this meeting.
Just after this meeting to begin some dialogue with our health insurance partners on what potential rates may be looking. Am I?
Yes, and we are this year, we are shopping carriers, so, and plans. So we're going to do a full deep dive into the plan this year. We're going to look at different options from carriers, different plan designs, such as we discussed a little bit last summer, the high deductible health plan model, and possibly adding that in addition to the PPO and HMO that we already have as a third option for a type of plan to offer a low cost option.
And again, so we're absolutely crystal clear on this. We are not suggesting to switch our plan to that. We are looking at that as a supplement to any employee that may look at that as something that's appropriate for their family.
Yes, we will continue to offer regardless of carrier and other plan options we may add in. We will continue to offer plans that are substantially the same in coverage and cost as the plans we have.
Perfect. Thank you.
Applicants, there were, we're really seeing a good rebound in applicants and new hires. Particularly in terms of new hires. There were 26 new hires last month. A lot of those are some positions that were newly created by the budget, as well as some filling of vacancies. So we're really catching up on filling in our vacancies.
I don't know how the midsection or southern section of the county is doing, but up at the north end, it would be my observation that there is enormous movement within the municipalities. I think Carpentersville just took on a new village administrator that used to be a trustee. A new police officer has been named there. East Dundee just swore in a new police officer, a new police chief. A lot of movement within the ranks up at the north end. I don't know if that's across the entire county, but that the activity is there is my point.
Well, and we do have 2 director positions that we're currently, looking at too. So I think we've seen that movement as well.
Do we know if the finance director has been posted yet, or is that imminent?
It has been posted on multiple locations, so it's available on the county website. It's available as a posting on Indeed, governmentjobs.com, as well as a financial professional site.
Super. Thank you so much.
What was it? Linda, was there a closing date in that posting?
So it's just posted open, and what
Open.
we're doing is we're evaluating the applicants at the end of each. We'll make the first review after 2 weeks and then weekly thereafter. And once we have a pool established that is sufficient, then we'll close it.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is the workers' comp and liability insurance reports. Nothing out of tolerance among those reports. If there are any questions regarding them?
Jamie, a couple of items that occurred yesterday that we should discuss offline. But again, with this committee, it is just the most unfortunate of timing that our committee meets directly after county board, which oftentimes goes into executive session to discuss pending payments and litigations. Again, sometimes those stretch multiple years. So something that may have been discussed on a Tuesday may be realized 2 years later on a Wednesday, and I just want to acknowledge that and apologize. It is what it is. That's just the nature of the beast, but be aware of it. Our actions have consequences, both positive and negative, and we want to make sure that we're governing ourselves to the very best of our ability.
And in terms of understanding these reports, they do include reserve amounts. So when a claim is filed, the adjusters and, if necessary, attorneys determine a reserve amount, which is the expectation that we would have to pay out on the claim. Even if our exposure were likely to win, we still put a reserve in just in case we do not. So reserves are established and
Baked
many-
into the figures that we're seeing.
and they're included in the figures that you're seeing. So most of the pending litigation that you talk about in closed session, if it is a claim and a claim has been filed, then we do have it included in our reports as a reserve. So a lot of times you will hear both our workers' comp counsel and the state's attorney talk about it's within reserves. That means it's within the amount that we were accounting for and planning for as an expense associated with that claim. If it's above reserves, then it would be above and beyond what we have planned for and accounted for in our reports.
Perfect. Any questions on any of that? Okay, I think it's straightforward.
And I just wanted to add, as an update, yesterday, the board did pass our resolution regarding the wellness plan, which does make some adjustments to the wellness plan such that employees, rather than having that annual biometric screening, which was a required in-person large gathering, that we have moved to our wellness plan, establishing that employees go to their primary care physician for a covered wellness exam. in order to achieve that wellness bonus that will begin, they'll need the exam in this year to achieve that wellness benefit starting in 2024. So that was passed yesterday. So in the next couple of days, we will be rolling out material to the employees regarding that and explaining all of that and making sure they understand that program going forward. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that.
And for those of you new sitting in the room saying, why are we even discussing this? This is 4 years in the making. This is an uphill battle. This is pushing that snowball up to the top, and now we're finally going to see it, begin to level out. But I want to give Jamie the credit for being the horsepower behind this to get this straightened out, and thank you for doing that.
Mr. Chair,
Pepe.
Pepe here. When will the people start seeing the money
Excuse me?
for the equity adjustment?
Oh, I'm sorry. We haven't started talking about that yet. I think he just put the next slide up. So I think we were talking about the wellness plan at the
So
time.
warm.
You can tap Vern on the shoulder, wake him up, we'll be all set.
But it sounds like we'd like to talk about the
You
equity.
might want to
adjustment now.
include that so I don't have
Yeah.
to ask that question.
We'll include that, yeah.
Ms. Lewis?
Before we move on to equity, and we're still on wellness, I just wanted to, again, congratulate you guys on our wellness program. So far, we started Walker Tracker. We had our first, like countywide, and this is to people that are in our insurance and not. We had 94 participants in the first challenge.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it is.
That's great.
So, the board members have not really done their part yet, but I'm sure they're working into it. Although Mr. Roth is quite the overachiever. I just want to
If
put that
that
on the
was
record.
if that was a challenge,
I don't know. but
accepted.
there'll be a group challenge in May, so we'll be hearing more about that. They also instituted a program called Wonder, which is for people that are on our insurance. And it is not a weight loss program. It's a sensible eating, and it goes into a lot of the psychological things about like, why do I eat, and then even do a little quiz on like, are you a stress eater? Are you a
Yes.
lonely eater?
Yes.
All those things. Do you eat too many donuts at board meetings, And then the last thing is for our insurance members this month, you could get a not a reduction, you get your free membership dues at a ton of different health clubs, which was also really cool. Because those of us that didn't do as well as others in the Walker Tracker now have to join the gym so that on cold days, we can still get our steps in. So anyway, applaud to that. We've been talking about this for years, and I think it's really going to show some good results in the future. So thank you.
Anita, thank
Now
you.
on to equity.
Seriously, thank you for bringing us up to speed.
Now on to equity.
Now on to equity. Okay. Just wanted to provide everybody an update on the progress of the equity project. Just a reminder, the purpose of this is to establish a countywide grading system to reach internal equity. We're trying to make sure that all county employees are being paid equitably for similar workload in terms of responsibility. The board when we presented this originally, we had a $2.7 million total price tag to reach internal equity, and we determined to split that out over 3 years. The first $900,000 of that is in contingency in the current budget. If you want to go, see, I have a slide thing here.
Are you attempting? There we go.
It's got a little delay. So where we are now is we have conducted an initial meeting with department or elected office staff. The whole purpose of that is to compare the positions to other roles within the county. What we're grading on is not the actual job duties, but it's things like the autonomy, responsibility, the impact of their judgment, their independent decisions, as well as the education and experience required. It's not about the person that's in the job at this time. We are currently looking at the job itself and establishing a range that's suitable for that job. We are established an initial grade last summer, and we're using feedback from the department to make sure that that grade makes sense, that the job description includes all the relevant factors of the job, in that we are aware in human resources of all the factors of that job. So that's how that department is participating. Those meetings have been extremely beneficial in making sure we understand in human resources the role of each of those positions in detail, including some of the nuances that we may not know not working in that department. Once we have all of that information, we will evaluate the data and make a first draft of actual ranges that fit with those job grades that we have established with the department's help. And then we will need to have a second meeting, or it could be a paper review if it's a small department, with each department as what that first draft looks like. The goal is to have that completed prior to the April Human Services Committee, and the Labor Management Committee is, I believe, a day or two after Human Services, and we will be presenting there as well. So that is the plan to when to have that first draft done. Ultimately, it will need board approval prior to disbursement of money. So if the board were to approve that draft, then I believe disbursements could begin after the May board meeting.
So Jamie, just a couple of comments here when we dove into this a year or so ago, we created that chart, top to bottom, to identify how we might compare to other counties' external equity. And we identified those low hanging fruit that were just, we were off. We put together a plan that we just discussed over a multi-year to try and get those lifted so that we were competitive. The next goal was to come to internal equity and say, somebody in this department that's doing the exact same type of tasks as somebody in this department should be at the same base rate. There shouldn't be a discrepancy that, well, I want to switch from here to there because they make more. Well, I don't understand how how we manage that. And so I'm very pleased with the progress that we're making on this, in as much as it is our responsibility right here. We all use that, oh, we're stewards of the taxpayers' money. Well, then steward, this is it right here. But as we do that, I'm going to ask you, and I don't mean to place you on the spot, but you're dealing with a bunch of personalities from powerful department heads to outside elected offices. How is this being embraced? Are you getting the cooperation that you require? In general, is this being viewed as a good thing or, a pain in the butt? I mean, where are we at with this?
Generally, we've had a good reception.
Okay.
As we've conducted this meetings, and this is as expected. Each department advocates for their staff and the importance of their staff beyond that of other areas. I think that's expected that they, working within their department are advocating hard for their staff. I think the important piece of this is having each department viewed with a single lens. To make sure that we're being equitable, because each department head would naturally put their staff, higher in grade than staff in other departments and things like that. I think it's just natural, to be a strong advocate for your staff, and each and every department head and elected official has been a strong advocate for their staff. And our staff is responsible for making sure that an objective lens is being used for all departments. So, sometimes that can be a challenge, but, after explanation, it does seem to go over well. So I do believe that there only good can come of this. Salaries can only go up. Nobody's salary would be reduced or anything like that. So there's only positive to come from this. We are attempting internal equity. We are not attempting external equity. When we reviewed this last summer, external equity changes were never made. We simply used the external equity to help us establish those early ranges for the determination of some estimates. When we talked about external equity, we looked at a price tag from, anywhere from 3 million up to 9 million, depending on which agencies were used as comparisons. And we really need to reach this internal equity first, so that when the board looks at external equity, they can apply, again, that same objective lens to all positions in the county, rather than having some departments feeling that one area is a more accurate comparison and some feel another, but rather to make sure we're being consistent across all the departments. So while we've had excellent participation, there are 4 groups that chose not to participate. That would be the auditor, the recorder, the sheriff, and the regional office of education.
Jamie, before we go there, I just want to, I'm going to make a statement, but make sure I'm going to ask you to make sure I'm being accurate in this. I made the comment that we tried to take care of the low hanging fruit and get those bounced up to where we needed to temporarily or expeditiously. The goal of this is if we do have the opposite side of that, we do have people that are over and above, we are not trying to claw that money back. Though, correct? Those, if you're already there and you happen to be above the bar, we are not looking to penalize or bring those back down. This shouldn't be viewed as negative in any way. Am I accurate in that statement?
Absolutely. No one will see a reduction in salary. Absolutely not. That would not happen.
I just want to make sure that that's stated on the record so that there's not anybody listening to this online or later that's saying, oh my gosh, they're coming after it. No, we're not coming after anybody. We just need to make sure that as a group, we have a management tool available to us. So
Yes, annually, if the board decides to apply a cost of living adjustment, what would happen is the ranges would be increased by that cost of living adjustment. And ultimately, someone who was over range, if they become in range with a cost of living adjustment, then they would be in range again. So that's really how that works. They would still be eligible for, merit-based increases. People over range, those are typically given in form of a lump sum distribution once or twice a year, depending on the amount of it, to make up for increases so that you're not compounding that annual salary. So their annual salary would remain the same and their increase would be given in a lump sum distribution.
thank you. And I did not mean to disrail you because I actually asked you to put this report together. So please restate again. Cooperating, not cooperating, where are we?
Yes, elected officials have the option to opt out and not participate in the study. And so we've had 4 departments determined to opt out. I don't want that to be seen as not cooperating. They just don't want to participate in the study and have indicated their intent to opt out. So that would be the auditor, the recorder, the sheriff, and the regional office of education. The remaining departments have opted in. The county departments are required to participate and the remaining elected offices have opted into the process. The areas marked with a green are areas that have been completed. We have completed our initial meeting with all but 2 departments and the circuit clerk is scheduled for tomorrow. We had the health department scheduled earlier, but due to an illness in the executive director, we've had to reschedule that. But we do not have that date yet. That'll be pending his return. All the other departments have had their initial meeting. We do need job descriptions. So in cases, for example, where we were discussing a position and the department said, no, this should be a higher grade because of this reason or that reason, and we agreed, we need a revised job description that includes that difference. So in some cases, we are still awaiting some job descriptions from those departments. So those are marked in pink. So we are missing job descriptions from a handful of departments. We also are asking for an updated organizational chart that includes all of the positions on it. Some of the org charts that are presented at the board level include blocks, all employees under a certain block, or just the name of a department or sub-department under a block. So what we want is one that shows all the positions in the department, all the non-union positions in the department. Again, this is only a review of non-union positions in an effort to get our non-union positions up to the same level.
And
as
folks,
our
my
union.
goal, and Jamie, thank you for the colorful chart because those of you that know me, I'm very visual in how I approach things. But all of this information is this is stuff that you guys asked for, that you called personally, that you sent an email, that you said, hey, this is what I'm looking for. We tried to make sure it's included in there. So if there's something that we've missed that you're saying, hey, you never answered my question, pick up the phone, text me, blast me an email, let us help you. But we've tried to incorporate this in here. And Jamie, thank you for putting this into something that makes it easier for me. I appreciate that.
And that, we understand that all our departments are very busy, but our ability to get this completed by the April Human Services Committee is going to be dependent on all of the departments giving us the information we need to finish.
Can
So-
we get this out to the chairs of the respective committees and ask them for assistance in getting this completed by that date?
Certainly.
And I'm happy, you're happy to pen that under my name. I'm happy to do that.
Certainly. We've asked everybody, we've sent out reminders and asked everybody for materials by the end of this week. So that
If
is
you don't
the
get
deadline.
those, I'll make personal phone calls. I'm happy to do that. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Cliff, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Linder.
Cash flow on this, 2.7 million divided by 3 is $900,000. And get me right, I'm all in favor of getting our people up to a fair salary and getting it done. I'm worried about that sometimes. But so we do that this year. We start next year already spending an extra $900,000. So the cost next year from today to next year is really $1.8 million. The 900,000 this year goes into raises. If we spend 900,000 next year, it's $1.8 million. 900 and $1.8 million is your 2.7. How does that work? That we're really going to be over 3 years spending, the way I'm looking at it, spending about 5.4.
I think the plan, and Jamie, again, don't let me speak out of line, but I think the plan was that we could not absorb the full impact in 1 year. It just wasn't available.
Right.
And I think between Madam Chair and I and Jamie, we said that we can't ignore it. So come up with a strategy, and the strategy that we came up with that was fair and equitable to both the employees and to the board was to say, here's a 3-year increment. I believe the initial number was like $700 and some thousand. After a little debate, we were able to include a little bit more and bump it up to 900,000 to get us there. And that was approved for this past cycle. Will the request be there to bump this up to the 1.8, if you will, if you're looking year over year and you go back 2 years? Sure, it will. Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. How we challenge that from a board perspective is up to us. So if you're asking, what was the methodology? It's that simple. If you're asking where the money's coming from, there is no simple answer. That's what you as a board, we heard loud and clear that we needed to make a strategy to get this fixed. There's the strategy. How we pay for it is a different conversation. That is a much larger picture. But you are absolutely correct. That's the destination point, and there's going to be some barriers to get there that we're going to need to overcome. And there's 24 of us that have to figure that out. So
I think that when we report to the full board, they need to be aware that we probably have to be looking at some revenues to make this work.
that you could look at it for that way. You could look at it at expense cuts.
Well,
I mean, it's-
I
Yeah.
consider an expense cut to be a revenue as well. I know that's the accountant does.
Understand? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be activity if the board deems this appropriate. Our job was to come up with a plan and present it
Right.
through this committee to the board. I think we've done an excellent job of that.
It looks good.
You could reject it and say that's not happening, and we hope that that's not the case. I hope that we've collated everything that you've asked us to and included it, and that what you found is acceptable. And the plan between the three of us, Madam Chair, Jamie and I, that we brought forward is something that was palatable. And those baby steps were enough that we could actually get that equity ball started. But let's not drop it. But Mr. Linder, that challenge is coming. Absolutely.
Right.
And I don't think anybody's naive to that. We've been nothing but cards up on that.
And as a former union negotiator, I will tell you that the unions will be looking at what we do here. And if we're bumping some positions 4 or 5%, we're offering the unions 3, they're going to be screaming. next time we bargain. That's just,
Right.
Right.
A couple of things. First of all, the compounding that you're talking about, Mr. Onsick did account for that in all of the estimates when this was originally presented in the budget presentations. So all of the forecasts that he prepared did include that the salaries would be higher each time. So that was part of the plan. Regarding the union component, the unions have received higher raises over the last 12 years than non-union staff. So we are trying to actually catch them up and will actually still probably be behind if you looked at a 10-year plan of the union. So they are way ahead of the non-union staff because nobody's been advocating on behalf of the non-union staff.
thank you.
And again, Jamie, your non-union staff total here without auditor, recorder, sheriff, and education, 583 approximately staff people.
Staff people, right? And
It's not an
that's-
insignificant number. It's a big number. So. Okay, thank you. And Vince, I see you here. Thank you for bumping over. We're getting to you as fast as we can. Okay. Jamie, did you have anything left on the equity report?
Can I have some?
Oh, Mr. Tepe, I'm so
Yes.
sorry.
Couple of questions and first off, I want to applaud you for doing this. I don't think there's anything in my mind that's much more important than one, paying people equitably and two, using that to help retain staff. Okay. With that being the case, you think that this will be done by next month?
If we get full cooperation, we get all the materials we need from the departments that are outstanding. We'd like to have a first draft available by next month's Human Services Committee. That'll be the first time it's presented to this committee. So, you know, if edits need to be made to it, or if the board has questions or comments that we need to go back and make revisions, of course, that's a possibility, but we hope to have that first draft presented at the next committee meeting if everything goes according to plan.
Okay. And, just recently, the state's attorney's office in particular, there were a couple of special meetings and information that was presented, I'm sure that you're aware of. And they talked about discrepancies in the valuation that had been used for their positions. Have you been able to take any of that into account, or are you staying with the original estimates that you had?
Jamie, if I can,
There-
if I can ask a question to Vern on this. Was that question specific to external or internal equities? I believe the question that you're asking was raised on external equities, and this report doesn't address that. Does not address that. This is an internal equity report. Am I mistaken on that in some way?
Well,
That's correct.
Madam
It's-
Chair says correct. Jamie says correct. Vern, I just want to make sure that we're not mixing apples and oranges.
Yes, the
Maybe
state,
I'm confused in my mind because I recall a presentation by Jamie where she had talked about the difference in pay of different areas, part of that being the state's attorney's office, in comparing that to other counties surrounding us.
That's not this report.
right.
This
that-
report is just the internal.
Correct. When we first started talking about this about a little over a year ago, we were looking at external equity and some of that information as far as, most counties use some kind of grading system for their positions, and looking at how they graded and where they graded other positions in relation to each other was some of the foundation used for determining this grading system. However, we are not trying to reach a financial external equity through this process. The state's attorney's concerns have been heavily about comparing their salaries to the salaries of Lake County specifically. Last summer, when they first made that comparison, we did look at if we were to look at all county non-union positions in comparison to Lake County, and that was approximately, I think it was about $9 million. If you were to try to compare all of our positions to Lake County positions. So we are not currently trying to address external equity. We determined we do not have the funds available at this time. And also, we really need to look at internal equity first, so that when the board does determine the appropriate comparison point for this county to another county, that is applied to all the county departments equally.
And Jamie, just because I have the tendency to oversimplify everything, I view this as the prerequisite to get to that. Like, we can't be comparing our external equities when we don't even have our own house put together. So this prerequisite program is to maybe get us to that next level. Am I,
Yes, you would have to do 30 different equity studies for our 30 different departments if you were to not do this first. By establishing a baseline for the county, you can then establish our baseline to the baselines of other counties and then make an adjustment that you see is appropriate based on the information from those other counties. And the board can consider as many factors as they want when determining what they would like to compare. You can look at cost of living, you can look at, any statistic you want for those other counties as you do that if you would like. And that would be a decision for the board to make and then apply it to budgets of departments and offices as they see fit.
yeah, we'll get you the data. What y'all do with it is, up to the 24. And I just don't want to also throw this out here that when we discuss some of these studies, this came with a budget of from $30,000 to $100,000 and unbelievable timeframes. We have been able to do this in-house within our department, within the time frame, and Jamie and your entire team, we can't say thank you enough for doing that and hitting those goals. And I'm hoping that we get the cooperation we need to have that first draft in by April. I have every confidence. I have always been a supporter of our 24 members. And I believe if I look just in this room, from ex officio, Mr. Shepro to Mr. Linder to Dr. Iqbal to Mr. Tepe to Mr. Roth. Ms. Juvie, I don't know. No. I don't know what your background is. I'm looking attorneys. I'm talking,
Okay, it's a woman thing. and
no,
you-
it's not a woman. Oh, stop that.
It's fun.
Stop that.
Oh,
Stop,
man.
step right into that one.
I did have
My point is, we have a bunch of attorneys in this room that are really quite well versed in this, and I believe their ability to guide us without hitting the landmines that we're going to be coming up against, like that one. I'm very good. Ms. Juvie, I will
Mr.
have no
Chair.
problem apologizing for when I step
Your
in.
hand
So
Mr. Chair, may I suggest a segue to a different discussion?
there we go. I agree, but I thank you. We have the ability. Mo, you've had your hand up. Ms. Lewis,
Oh, thank you, thank you. I did want to point out that
it's painful.
in our internal, we did actually compare the state's attorney's office to the public defender's office to make sure that those salaries were equal and because there was a lot of inequity there.
Yes.
So that was a very, very important first move.
Do you have something?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you for inviting me. I'm not a member of the committee. For the equity, external equity, since it has been brought up, I have prepared some slides that I would like to share with you. Since you are a visual person, you might want to see that. It is, I think Blair has it, if he can put it on. It goes back to the state attorney's office presentation of the external equity issue.
I think.
This is going to be,
Yeah.
if we're going to external, do we have the latitude, Jamie, if the agenda item is 6F equity project update? Do we have the latitude to go to the external slides for a few minutes?
Certainly.
I don't have any problem with that. I don't,
I think it'll confuse things since this report is just internal.
It's-
So maybe if you could just share it with
Discussion.
everybody so that when we get to the external section.
It will take 3 minutes.
for 3 minutes, let's indulge Dr. Iqbal, and thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
I think we're stronger together, so.
Oh, that would be kind of, okay. How do we press it?
Well, don't give him the controls.
Now
Dude.
you're giving them control.
You're never getting those back now. It's-
It goes back to Terry Hunt's presentation of the state attorney's office data versus Lake County. And he showed that Lake County was paying roughly 20% more than did Kane County for both legal staff and the non-legal staff. And, based on that, I am not a member of the Labor Management Committee, but I overheard a few comments from there. I was glad that Ms. Molina was there, and she made some comments. That data that Terry Hunt presented was the raw data. He simply took the data from Lake County and compared it with Kane County. And I believe that data, when you are comparing one jurisdiction with another jurisdiction, it has to be adjusted based on demographics, based on the income level, and so forth. And that's what I did in my exercise, just to make myself more educated. As a value of money, when you're comparing this dollar value, say in Lake County versus Kane County, we have to consider two things: the time value and the location value. And in this context, per capita income comes, and then there we need what is called an equalization factor, which is generally done in the property taxes. In other data processing, we call it normalization, when we compare two data which are not exactly equal. So we normalize it so our parameters are exactly the same. And that's what I tried to do. In this case, here it is. I asked the Economic Development Department, what is the per capita income of Kane County versus Lake County? And it showed that there was a difference, roughly 20%. Our per capita income in Kane County is 20% less than Lake County. That's a richer county, even though the population-wise, we are the same. So I wanted to adjust it and see what did the data compare? How does it compare when we adjust it for the per capita income? This way. So when I adjusted it, it appears that all the levels of the Lake County and the Kane County compare very well. There's not much difference between the salary range or the salary.
If you can't see that
Data.
blue column is Kane, red column is Lake.
Exactly, yeah. Sometimes Kane is paying more, sometimes Lake is paying more. And I did it another way, the same data. And this shows both counties. Kane is blue and the red is Lake, I believe. And it turns out they are very, very close. So I did not see any inequity that was being advocated. I have a series of conversation via email to Terry Hunt and to the State Attorney Moser. If somebody wants to look at it, they are welcome to do that. So based on that, there is no adjustment needed for equity, external equity. The second thing, which is totally different, okay, this is how I computed my equalization factor. So you take the per capita for Lake County and divided by the Kane County, and the factor is 21%. And that 21%, I think, should be considered when we are comparing our two salaries. The second thing is totally different, which I think it doesn't belong here. And that's the timeline. What is the budget of State Attorney's Office from 2015 to now? That is probably the Finance Committee, but I have a graph right here. And I took the data from the last 10 years from the Finance Department and plotted it. And the orange color is the real budget values, budget expenditure. And that, as you see, is going very, very high.
So Mo, not to confuse things, this is blue column, red column. This is
Okay,
not,
I will explain the blue column.
yeah, this is not Lake versus
It's not a
Kane
lake,
now
yeah.
in this slide. This is different comparison.
It's a different comparison. Since I consider 2015 as the first year, I consider, say, if that is a yardstick, that's the baseline. And if we adjust it by the inflation, how would expenditure grow? So I consider 2%, which is generally is, given to the union labor. And for the last 2 years, I think inflation has been high, so I consider it as 6%. I could not get the real inflation data for Kane County. So whatever number inflation had, it has been adjusted, and it looks like the expenditure of the Kane County State Attorney's Office is way, way high. It is growing too much.
So inflation in blue,
Inflation is blue,
red is the state's
the
attorney's
orange is
actual.
the real expenditure. So it's something for the finance committee to look at.
Okay.
Well, this chart is looking at the total expenditure of the department,
Expenditure minus revenue,
expenditure minus,
revenue from general funds, yes.
And Dale, I think this is something we'll move off to you. Again, for Mo, and I'm not dismissing that. Thank you for the work on that. I mean, that's pretty enlightening. But again, our focus is on the internal equity right now, not on this piece.
Yeah,
But Dale, we'll make sure that we parlay this over to you. Is that okay?
yeah, this is part of record. If anything, any backup you need, I'm glad to share it.
Mo, thank you so much. Jamie, we do need to get to items 8 and 9 and 7. Do we have a training report?
It's the sexual harassment training. It's in progress. I don't know that we need to cover it. I know we're tight on time. So if you want to move on to the resolutions, we certainly can.
Super. So, hi, folks. For the 19,000th time, we are going to try and pass and adopting a personal relationships policy to the personnel policy handbook. And Jamie, if you could just highlight way high, 10,000 feet, what changes have been made? And if I could be as bold as to say, I believe the word romantic was the sticking point with 3 of our board members. I'm hoping that that we have seen our way through this and that we can move this forward. Finally,
Certainly. If we can go down 2 pages to the redlined version of it, it might be a little easier to see what those changes are. So the blue is what's been stricken and the red is what's been added. I'm sorry, the blue at the top is what's been added and then there's some lined out. So
I'm sorry, in its totality or just since the last meeting?
since there was no policy before, so there is nothing in its totality. It's all new. So this is not replacing an existing policy, but is an entirely new policy proposed to the handbook. So these are tracked changes versus the last version that was presented. So we tried to address some of the concerns that were brought up in the executive committee regarding this policy. We added the policy statement at the beginning to make sure that it was clear the intent of this policy is to prevent instances of sexual harassment in the workplace and conflicts of interest with respect to working conditions. That is the primary purpose of putting this policy in, since there was some concern that people thought it seemed like we were invading on people's personal lives, when that is certainly not the intention of the county or this department. It's rather to make sure that we're protecting our employees from instances of sexual harassment and conflict of interest.
Okay, stop right there. Does everybody understand that? There's no question what the intent of this is. We're not trying to be intrusive to anybody's personal life. We are just saying we have issues that we need to protect people from, and this is part of that.
The
Understood.
second, The second major concern that was brought up in the executive committee was use of the word romantic and it being ambiguous in nature. I think in terms of a policy like this, I don't know if there's any way to make it completely objective, but we did take a stab at trying to make it a little more objective. And so we changed, instead of romantic relationship, we changed it to a personal relationship. And then we added 4 bullet points. A personal relationship that must be disclosed includes, but is not limited to, the following examples. A dating relationship, including any relationship which has the intent or goal of romance or intimacy. So that's intended to cover that romantic relationship in a little bit more specific of a way. We also included a friendship that includes personal confidence or emotional beyond that of casual socializing, a sexual relationship, or a cohabitation relationship. So those are the full 4 bullet points that we put in to try to more specifically address the details that would be a personal relationship that is required to be disclosed under this policy.
And Jamie, did you pull these out of the air by doing a Google search, or by chance were they vetted by the state's attorney's office?
They absolutely, it was fully vetted by the state's attorney's office.
Our attorney, the people that we hire to protect us, have in fact suggested that these items should be in a personnel policy.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Gums and then Ms. Strathman. Michelle?
Thank you. I can wait until all of these are done. It was just in reference to the last presentation, so I think that might be a better spot.
Perfect. Ms. Strathman?
Yes, good morning. I was one of the 3 that was having a problem with the term romantic relationship. Excuse me. I think this is a way to clarify. I like the points, the 4 points that make it more clear. And I think I can support this. Like I said, this is a new policy problem for me, but I have seen the work that's gone into it, and I understand for sure. I understand the need for it. So I can support this. I think this is good. Thank you for doing all that work.
Cheryl, thank you so much. We tried to respond. So given that,
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry.
I'm
Ms.
not
Bates.
a member of the committee, but I know I was one of the people who had a problem with the word romantic. And to me, this sounds great. So thank you for helping us get over that hump. Thank you.
Ms. Lewis, do
Mr.
I
Chair,
have a
Silva?
motion?
You have a motion.
Silva?
Linder seconds. Any discussion?
Silva has a question. I'm sorry if you can you hear me? Silva has a question.
Yes, Ms. Silva.
I'm missing it. Reporting to whom if there is such relationship?
Jamie, would you like to answer that?
Yes, it says the employee shall disclose such personal relationship to their department head, the executive director of human resources, or the county board chair.
I like the or part. That's what I was about to discuss, is that if they don't have a comfortable relationship with a direct supervisor, that they do have the ability to speak to somebody else. It's an either or and not an and situation. Thank you and good morning.
Any other discussion? Mr. Linder?
5 words. This is very well done.
Thank you.
Call the roll.
Okay, let's call the roll.
I have a comment, but doesn't count.
Is it going to be positive?
No.
Okay, don't.
Sorry. Pay the roll call. Mr. Iqbal?
Yeah, I have still problem with that. Before Ms. Neerman left. Microphone, please. Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, I was in touch with her and she sent me, my question was, what does the law say about this kind of a relationship? And are there any lawsuits about it? Or are there any statute about it? The state does not have a statute about it. It has a Familial Relationship Disclosure Act. And that's all it requires. And cohabitation is mostly considered family. So once you take out the cohabitation part of it, everything is so fluid in this one that it is very hard for you to prove that somebody has a relationship. There is no victim in this case. The purpose of this one, I'm told here, is to stop sexual harassment, but there is no victim. The people are consensually having sex or whatever. And what's the point?
I believe one
If
of
we
the
could hold that
points-
1 second. Aaron, did you want to respond to that? Aaron Brady,
Yeah, I'm happy to if you'd like. Mr. Chair.
go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
Hi, can you hear me?
There you go.
Sure. I'm happy to respond if you'd like to those questions, as we did conduct that research after I understand Mr. Iqbal had some questions a couple of meetings back. We did present at the last Human Services meeting concerning those questions about the legality of having this type of a policy or asking these questions. Given the nature of the concern of protecting against sexual harassment within the workplace and the obligations that we as the county have to both prevent that and to be cognizant of and prevent conflicts of interest, these types of policies have been pretty routinely upheld nationwide by private and government employers. It is the most narrowly tailored way to find out this information. No one is preventing these types of relationships. Rather, in the event of a claim of, let's say, sexual harassment down the road, there would be a record of someone having disclosed the relationship as consensual. Additionally, it allows the county to take steps to carve out or circumvent a supervisory structure where one partner is a supervisor of another if necessary. And so our office, as I say, believes that there is no issue concerning the whether or not it's legal to have a policy like this. We believe that it is.
And if I can chime in, Mo, I think the victims on this may be the other coworkers that have to deal with the strife that has been caused. So I don't believe this is victimless. I believe there are victims. Then that's just my personal opinion. I'm just speaking as Cliff. So.
And in support of both what you and Ms. Brady said, a consensual relationship is consensual until it ends, and then everything changes. And that's on top of what Ms. Brady said, that once it ends, you do not have any ongoing harassment or anyone saying it was never consensual, because it was already disclosed as being consensual and is on the record as such. Additionally, as Mr. Sturgis pointed out, the victim is absolutely the conflict of interest that such a relationship does present in the workplace, and access to preferred working conditions, salary increases, and things like that of a person whom you may have a relationship with is a distinct risk that we need to make sure does not happen.
Your question is.
Dr. Iqbal, last one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just follow up on this one.
Mhm.
How would you enforce it? Do you require both parties to disclose, or just one comes up and say discloses, the other one doesn't even know or doesn't want to disclose?
Upon a disclosure, that would be a discussion that would be had based on who made the disclosure, who the person they had a relationship with. You would have a private meeting with the other person in the relationship to confirm it was that it was consensual. For example, you would have to make contact with the other employee in the relationship to find out if it was in fact consensual, because at that point, if it was not, then you would have a sexual harassment situation. So it does open up that opportunity to address that other person, that subordinate staff person, and ensure that they are not feeling pressured to be a part of that relationship.
Now, if it's the consensual and both parties come up, would there be registry open to public that we can say that these two people are consensually connected? On the Facebook, it is. Would you
It
do
is
that?
not. We can have Ms. Brady answer to that, but I do believe something that would be an invasion of personal privacy to release that record, but she could give a better.
Aaron, those would
understanding
be
of that.
private between human resources and the employees, correct?
Sure, there are a couple of different statutes. I'm assuming you mean, Mr. Iqbal, on a FOIA request? Is that
She's
what
asking,
you're
you mean on a FOIA request?
Even without FOIA, there has to be registry. If somebody wants to get married, they go to clerk's office and they are married and they, this is public, not a public information. If two people are saying we are connected, so what is the privacy left?
I don't,
would
Aaron,
not.
Aaron, I don't know that I consider that public information. I
So-
consider that private in the employee file.
So there are a number of different statutes involved concerning personnel files. Certainly on a FOIA request, there are a number of different exemptions that would cover personal information like that. We would, certainly work with any department who received a FOIA request like that. There's also the Personnel Records Review Act that specifies who may inspect personnel records and what kind. And so, whether or not something like that is written down, we would certainly recommend and work with anybody to, keep that information private and confidential as we would, in any other number of circumstances regarding personnel file requests.
Aaron, thank you. Oh, I hear your objections. I'm going to call a vote
Okay.
and,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Mr. Tepe.
does this apply equally to those personnel that are covered by other elected officials?
It does not. Under eligibility, it does state all employees under the jurisdiction of the county board. We are not able to set a policy that affects the elected offices. They would have to either choose to adopt this policy or write their own.
Was that specific?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know this is a heavy topic, but I appreciate that our female-run board and our female state's attorney and our female attorneys were all able to chime in on this because they are all much smarter than I am, and I appreciate that. Just to balance the load a bit. Please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Silva,
Silva, yes.
Tarver,
Tarver, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Surges.
Surges, yes.
Passes.
Thank you. Item 9A, resolution authorizing payment of additional workers' compensation premium expense for fiscal year 2022. Is this an audit expense? Is this a,
It's a housekeeping annually. Once the audit of actual payroll is determined, then we have to true up whatever we paid based on an estimated payroll.
does anybody have any questions on that at all?
I will move it.
And I'll second.
Kenyon moves and Lewis seconds.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Tepe, thank you.
I think there may be a scrivener's error. I believe it should be a minus to cash on hand, not a plus to cash on hand.
Vern, where do you see that?
In the
In
budget
the
adjustment.
details of the resolution, where it has a bunch of numbers and says insurance liability workers comp plus 16,420. And then insurance liability cash on hand plus 16,420. Doesn't that have to be a negative?
It is an expense account. So my understanding from finance that it would be an increase to that expense and a increase to the, so they've told me that's the way it's written. So I don't know if maybe Mr. Berman can add to that, or if you just want to let it go to finance, but that's
But
what I
then
was told.
later on, it says, well,
One's a revenue and one's an expense, and that's why they're both pluses. That's what I was
so
told. but
my point
I
would
could be
be,
wrong. I'm not a finance person.
my point would be, where's the money coming from? So
It's coming
anyway,
from cash on hand.
just double check on that before it goes to, goes
Yes,
further.
it'll go to it will go through finance committee
I know.
and face a correction if needed.
So we're moving this under the assumption that there might be an error on a plus or minus that needs to be corrected, and Dale will make sure that before it gets to you that that's vetted.
Very good.
Fair? Okay, let's call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Silva,
Silva, yes.
Tarver,
Tarver's, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Surges.
Surges, yes. And Vern, thank you for catching that. I appreciate it. Item B, resolution amending 11-301, creating an administrative structure of Kane County's 457B deferred compensation plan. Jamie, give us a quick brief.
If you remember, we determined last year that we were going to pursue changing to Voya as our 457B provider.
Would you
It's-
explain what the 457B is?
It's a deferred compensation, very similar to a 401k plan where you're allowed to defer compensation on a pre-tax basis into a retirement account. That is then-
Elective.
Elective, yes, it's elective. It's the employee's option if they would like to put money in this, and then it goes to an investment account and is tax sheltered in the similar way to a 401k, except for this is specific to government agencies.
That was a lot. Any questions on that before we take a? This is a great voluntary program that's in addition to anything else the employee might do.
Yes, so what this resolution is doing that there was resolution 11-301, which established that the auditor was the administrator of the plan, and that the Human Resources Department was responsible for payroll deductions, and that the treasurer was the backup to those functions. Human Resources doesn't do payroll deductions. Finance payroll department does that. And Human Resources has been acting as the plan administrator for as long as I've been here. So it seems more functional to have Human Resources function as the plan administrator. In order to be plan administrator, you do need to verify disbursement requests that those employees have terminated their employment. We have the best access to those records regarding termination of employment, as well as the bandwidth to work with our financial advisors on the best plan choices. So this would be correcting it to what we are doing in current practice. But the auditor came today in case you have any questions for her regarding the change as well.
So this was vetted through finance and through auditor.
It was not, it will go to finance committee next.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Kenyon, can I have a motion on this?
Yes.
And Ms. Lewis, second?
Yes.
Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis? Yes.
Silva,
Silva, yes.
Carver,
Tarver, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Sturgis.
Sturgis, yes. Item D, Vince, I think you're up. Thank you, Penny. We have been bantering this Ethics Commission quandary quite a bit. If I could chime in all on this, I think that we are trying to figure out who sits on. I think we agree we need an Ethics Commission. I believe the question is who sits on the Ethics Commission. I believe it was brought up by a board, bless you, brought up by a board member that board members should not be sitting on the Ethics Commission. If they are talking about our own ethics, I kind of agree with that. And so Vince, if that's the groundwork on this, bring us up to speed.
So the Ethics Commission, this is part of a update to the ethics ordinance. Currently, an Ethics Commission, as full disclosure, is not required by law. The act does not require it, but the Attorney General, when they put out their model, strongly recommended it. And the purpose of the Ethics Commission would be to receive complaints, conduct hearings, and then make recommendations for discipline or impose a fine. So that would be the purpose of it. And why it would be needed in King County would to alleviate any kind of conflict of interest that the state's attorney would have. I did look around at other counties, and most of them have a 5-member Ethics Commission. It doesn't need to be 5 members. It could be 3 if you wanted that. That's what the AG had in their model. But the question then would be, one of the things that the committee would need to figure out is who they would want, or I should say county board, to sit on the Ethics Commission. I believe one of the recommendations was if you could have a board member be on the Ethics Commission, and that could also involve some sort of conflict of interest, or our ethics advisor is a retired judge, and the county can certainly go in that direction as well, of trying to put out a request for judges that have retired that would be willing to sit on an Ethics Commission. And so really, it's just how many members, what is this committee and county board?
Vince, if I can ask you, how is it handled now?
Currently, the way that it's situated, if there's a complaint that would go to the state's attorney, the state's attorney would then investigate that, and then an ordinance violation could be filed in which that person would be prosecuted under a quasi-criminal ordinance violation.
To change this to an ethics commission, does this come with a cost, and how do other counties handle this?
Well, it would not, I don't think it would come with a cost if you were able to find retired judges who, because I believe our ethics advisor is not being charged. He is paid? Okay, well, I guess he is being paid. So I guess that it depends on whether you can find individuals that would want to do it for no cost, or if you are going to pay them, it'd probably be the same way that I guess the ethics advisor is.
And would you or Aaron have any idea how many, if any, complaints have been raised? Is this something that happens often, or is this like once every 10 years there's a?
From my personal observations, it does not happen often, but I don't know the answer to that question specifically.
Aaron, do you have any basis on that?
I would say it's rare but not unusual.
Okay,
Not, one a year maybe that I'm aware.
okay, and
I
that
would-
gives some context.
That
That
being
gives some
said,
context.
That being said, I wouldn't necessarily be aware of all of them.
Okay,
You will get a report next month from the ethics advisor of the previous year. So it has names removed from it, and it just says the ethics advisor received a question about a certain topic and how the ethics advisor responded to that. So it's a generic listing. So he is paid by the hour for his time because he does make an analysis and give advice and make rulings. So he does charge once a year. We pay an invoice for that. It's nominal.
okay. Michelle, did you have a question, Ms. Gumbs?
Yes, just a really quick, you asked earlier how it's normally handled, and whether you like it or not, I think historically there's ethics committees in government bodies, and those are all board members or sitting legislators or whoever, but they are actual committees.
Thank you. So Vince, I think you're looking to us to give you some shape on this. I don't know if we're in a position to successfully give you that information, but what are you specifically looking for? This is just a discussion item today. So what are we?
Correct. I guess I originally didn't know specifically whether the committee wanted to move forward with an ethics commission. So that was part of the discussion.
Okay, so let's just ask that. Committee wise, are you as a body that's here, and I'll extend that beyond the committee for anybody that's online or in the room. Do we want to, is there an urgency to move this forward? Is the state's attorney, Aaron, is the state's attorney saying you guys don't want to deal with this anymore and you should get your own commission put together, or why are we doing this?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't want.
Aaron, go ahead.
No, that Vince is better suited to answer that one. To answer your first question, I don't think it's not because the state's attorney's office doesn't want to do it, but I'll turn it over to Vince.
So speak slower and louder.
Yeah, you're coming through very garbled, just to let you know.
I'll let Vince handle that one.
Okay.
Okay.
So the reasons why an ethics commission would be proper or appropriate in this situation is, as I identified before, it would cut back on any kind of conflict of interest at the state's attorney, who is required to investigate, but then also act or represent any employee of the county. So if there is a conflict of interest with the state's attorney's office, if they're required to do that. Second of all, the state's attorney, as many know, has internal control. So the county requiring the state's attorney to do that could be an issue. There could be state's attorneys in the future that just refuse to follow the ethic ordinance as it relates to their requirement to do that. And then second of all, it would cut back on any kind of judicial proceedings where essentially it may not be needed. The Ethics Commission would be able to conduct a hearing and make recommendations or impose a fine without having to go to court at all. So those are part of the reasons to have an ethics commission. I can let you know that DuPage, Lake, McHenry, Kendall all have ethics commissions.
So based on the information given, it would seem proper to explore this further as a commission. Do we have some consensus on that?
I agree. Yes.
Okay, so Vince, you have consensus that moving forward would be a good idea. Now, if moving forward, what is your next question then? Mr. Shepro?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could just, Ken Shepro, provide some historical.
And Mr. Shepro,
context.
in what capacity are you speaking right now?
As a special assistant with some previous knowledge from a previous appointment.
Okay.
The issue of the commission was originally came before the county board when the statute was passed, when Chairman McConaughey was chairman. And as I recall, that issue was studied by the board. The board initially thought that it wanted an ethics commission. And then for various reasons, that was not followed, and in favor of the current situation with the ethics advisor. And as I think Mr. Coyle has already pointed out, the problem that created immediately was that I believe that Mr. Barsani, who was then the state's attorney, concluded that the state's attorney could not be required to take on that function for a variety of reasons, including internal control. But eventually there was I guess we use the best word I could think of, negotiated agreement as to what their role would be. However, all of the issues that have been just presented by Mr. Coyle as to the problems that created were never, I think, really addressed. And one that came to mind is that you were asking the state's attorney to have a consultative role, and yet they would also be the enforcement. And I remember particularly an example is if someone came to the state's attorney and said, gee, I just got back from a trip to, Disney World sponsored by somebody, and now I'm worried that I may have violated the ethics ordinance. State's attorney was in a position, you couldn't just give them advice. If it had come to you in that context, you had all sorts of issues. The idea, you wanted to encourage people to ask for advice, but if they were coming in and confessing in their mind to a violation, it put the state's attorney's office into a difficult position. I don't know that anything has happened since then to make that less of a.
So Ken, my
Sir.
question to you would be, if that same individual came forward and said, hey, I was invited to go to Disney World, should I accept or reject that? Can they no longer go to the state's attorney, or do they have to go to the ethics commission to decide whether that was that would be an appropriate action or trip to take
Been a
or
while
not?
since I looked at that, so I think I would defer that to Mr. Coyle. I think the answer is they would not go to the state's attorney.
Yeah, and I think the ethics commission will be more of after a violation occurs, they conduct the hearing and then recommendation. So I don't think that in that situation where someone has not taken their trip yet, that they would go to the ethics commission.
Okay,
I don't
got
think
it. So I think you have consensus that we are moving in the direction of a commission. What might be your next question?
I can put together a draft. I've already actually put on a draft and been working with Mr. Iqbal on a draft for this purpose, and I can certainly send that to the committee for individual feedback if they, because again, there could be questions of, how many members on the committee there should be and that sort of thing. And I'd love to hear any feedback individually.
So today is March 15th, 2023. And if we could get Vince information so that we could vote on this before like 2025, that would be outstanding. If you have concerns, if you have specific, a specific item that you're trying to address or a situation, let's get that to Vince so he can incorporate that in there. Mr. Linder?
Quick question. We would still be keeping the ethics advisor, right?
Correct.
So in that example that was given, that employee could call the ethics advisor and get some
Yes.
advice.
Correct.
Okay.
That's a great question. I assume that. I assumed the advisor would be out and the commission would take over.
No. So the ethic advisor is always an individual who would help guide or give guidance regarding issues related or questions regarding the ethics ordinance. The commission would just be a group that would conduct hearings if there's a violation or complaint given to the ethics commission to conduct a hearing. And then after that hearing, findings would be made by the commission, who would then make recommendations to the department head or county board or whoever that may be as a discipline or impose a fine.
This may be the norm, but boy, I just think we're creating a quagmire there. That person comes up and says, I want to go to Disney World, and he went to the advisor or she went to the advisor, and the individual was told, sure, it's not a problem. And then, wait a minute, I spoke with the state's attorney, and then wait a minute, now I am in front of the ethics commission. I thought I did everything right. And then, and I'm not speaking of me, I'm just saying, the individual, thought we did everything right, only to find out they were given misinformation from all over the place. That's, Vince, I don't envy your task ahead, but thank you for stepping up and volunteering to do that.
Thank you.
Any questions, Ms. Juvie?
First of all, you shouldn't have taken that trip if it was offered, because the ethics that you had to sign off on says you're not allowed to do that. However, I like the idea that this adds another layer of transparency and removes more conflict of interest. And I think it's not only something that we should be doing, but I think that because it ultimately will come to the county board as to how to decide to proceed with the advice of the committee, I think we should remain neutral on who you choose. And I do agree that either retired lawmakers, retired attorneys, or retired judges would be a good choice, but I think we should remain out of that decision because ultimately it will come before us.
Is it always legal? Is it always judges? Or is that the
I don't
norm?
think it's always judges. I don't.
Or attorneys? I don't know that.
There's no requirement by the law, if that's what you're asking. I don't know if every county has only attorneys or former judges doing it.
Mr. Shepro? You need a microphone, yeah.
Again, this is ancient history. When the original ethics advisor was selected, I think there was a general, I don't know whether it was a posting, but a number of applicants were interviewed, and at least one was not a judge, was I believe, a former prosecutor who was who was in private practice. And but I was also going to say, I haven't reviewed the statute. I don't think the board can divorce itself from the eventual choice. So eventually, if an advisor is going to be appointed, I don't believe that can be delegated to
You would
the
require
state's attorney's
concurrence,
office.
yeah. Can we at least, is there any notion today? 3 people, 5 persons? Anybody have any preference at all? Is 3 enough? Is 5 too many? You want 18? I don't.
I can certainly circulate a draft of start with either 3 or 5, and then if individuals want to.
I'm seeing 3 fingers go up all over the place. Is that the number?
3 is,
Linder, what do you?
3 or 5. No
5.
more than that.
5 would be
Your 18 is out.
Okay, let's go with an amount not to exceed 5.
All right. I will put
Okay, and
5.
draft it either way, and then we'll keep
Bonus.
moving it from there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Roth?
Vincent mentioned there's other counties have these committees in place. My comment would be, instead of reinventing the wheel, is maybe report back on how they're set up. And then, maybe the plus and minuses they're seeing, because why do we need to spend months trying to determine how we want to do it if they've already done it?
Plagiarism is alive and well here, so.
Well, no, it's, the quote is Radar Riley says, I don't steal, I appropriate.
Appropriate. There you go. Vince, do you have what you need?
Yes.
Thank you for spending your hour with us. I
All right, thank
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Bates?
I have a question about something that I'd like to bring to this committee that happened yesterday in the executive closed session of our board meeting. Does that mean we have to go into executive session so I can ask my question or not?
Hey, Vince or Ken, why don't you?
What would be the
Basis.
basis for?
Well, I don't know what to say. Something happened in the executive session was brought up that I would like to make sure never happens again.
Davis, we're going to go on to item 10. And while we do that, if you would like to stroll over,
Oh, okay.
thank you. Mr. Kenyon, could I have item 10, no motion to report?
No, I
Place
want a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Lewis.
Yes, I would like to unanimous consent to put the reports on file.
Well done, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you.
Any conversation on that?
Okay. Remember.
Placed on file. Do you need a roll call on that? We're all set there.
No, it's unanimous.
That's the purpose of it.
Yes.
Okay, we're stalling for 1 second for executive session.
Not if we adjourn.
For those online, bear with us for just 1 minute. There seems to be a huddle.
You've gone over a lot.
We've gone over a lot and we have a meeting in 4 minutes. So
I thought our meeting started at 10.
Yeah, it was 10. You've gone over.
Another meeting.
have another meeting at 10:30.
Meeting's more important than my meeting.
But the-
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't mean that at all because
Well, you don't confirm it.
Getting as bad as Mavis Bates.
I
I'm
think
running over meetings.
we're being delayed right now because of Mavis Bates.
That's right.
You'll learn.
Hey, I was really good. I only spoke.
I don't believe there's any need for an executive session.
Yes,
Right now.
Mr. Kenyon, you are up, sir.
I would like to move, that we adjourn till next month.
Second.
Mr. Linder seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
I.
Thank everyone